Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. Here I am, standing opposite Kipling House on Villiers Street in London. So this building dates from 1701 because there's a fire that destroyed the previous building on this site, though the building was extensively renovated in 1995 to 96. Anyway, it's got its name because Rudyard Kipling resided here 1891 to 92. So who was Rudyard Kipling? Well, he is best known as a bard of empire. He was born in India in the 1860s. His father Lockwood was a very distinguished artist. Rudyard spent much of his childhood in what was then Bombay. It's since been renamed Mumbai, well, 20 years ago. And he got into newspapers early. So he didn't have enough money to go to one of the more distinguished schools. He went to Haileybury, not too bad at all, and third level of education seemed out of the question. So he began as a newspaper editor no less, at the age of 17. He spent a lot of time in Lahore, which is now in Pakistan, and he flirted with anti-imperial notions and liberal left-wing politics. However, in mature adulthood, he came down firmly on the side of imperialism and the British Conservative Party. So he's best known for many of his poems, for example, Soldiers 3, The Jungle Book, and which bears little relation to the Hollywood cartoon or the 1990s version starring John Cleese. It's much more fabulous than that. And the names of the characters like Bagheera or Sher Khan, the names from Hindi or Urdu for these various beasts. So he knew an awful lot about Indian folklore, and he spoke passable Hindi. What else could I tell you about him? Soldiers 3, that's one of his poems about soldiers in the British Army in India. And who does he choose? A Yorkshireman, a Cockney, and an Irishman to represent those three soldiers. He also wrote various poems which were eulogizing imperialism, indeed American imperialism, with regard to the Philippines, like The White Man's Burden. He wrote that about the Americans conquering the Philippines, a fact which is often overlooked these days. Recessional, for example, which foresaw the possibility of imperial decline, being one with Nineveh and Tyre. He didn't quite live to see that come to pass. He was married, but he had no children. His first cousin was Stanley Baldwin, later Conservative Prime Minister, 1924 to 29, and again 1935 to 37. What else about Kipling? Yes, he was married, he had one son, Jack, who had very poor eyesight, but Kipling managed to pull strings and have his son accepted into the Irish Guards in the First World War. He went missing in action, his only child. There's My Boy Jack is a very poignant play about it, remade into a film with Daniel Radcliffe in the title role. So his son was never located, must have been killed in the Great War. What else about Kipling? He was very much against Irish Home Rule, and he wrote a celebrated poem about this, saying, if England drive us forth, we shall not fall alone, things like that. So he was supporting the Ulster-Solemn League and Covenant. Anyway, by the 1920s, his sort of verse was a bit old hat. It was out of fashion. The times had changed because people felt that excessive nationalistic fervour had been partially responsible for the First World War, and they just wanted a more muted expression of national pride. Felt it was a bit too militaristic. Anything else one should know about him? Well, this is where he perished, somewhat a broken man because of the death of his son. He wrote the official history of the Irish Guards, his son's regiment, after the First World War. So many more poems, barrack room ballads, could tell you about them all day. Kim, which got an eponymous hero, this spy novel about a British boy born in India, and it goes on and on. The Man Who Would Be King. You may have seen the 1970s version, in which Christopher Plummer plays him. He's only got a bit part in that. But when he wrote the novel, Kipling didn't write himself into it, but it's written from one person's point of view. The tale's being related to him, the newspaper editor. People say, oh, that really means Kipling. I don't think Kipling met anyone who quite liked those in The Tale, that fabulous 1979 film starring Billy Jaffrey and Michael Caine and the chap who played Bond, Sean Connery, and so on. Anyway, that's enough about Kipling. Villiers Street. This street, which is named after a very distinguished aristocratic family of the late Middle Ages. And there's another literary connection here, as Ben Jonson lived on the site as well. The other thing is, right over here, what's now Charing Cross Station, used to be a boot factory. Doesn't look anything like it now. And that's where Dickens worked when he was a child. So the River Thames used to come right up here. Only in 1863 the embankment was built. You see where the nearest tree is, the river would have come up that far. So the site of Kipling House was used for various purposes, as a salt warehouse and so on. Anyway, I'll switch it off now.